Everyone, good morning or good afternoon on this beautiful Saturday. I'm here today with my trusty companion Lily. I kind of try to gently encourage her to find a different spot to lie potentially, but she insists that she should be in the video. So today I want to start a new series, and that is the book club series. In the book club series, I want to talk about different journal articles and make them accessible. So kind of summarize an article each Saturday, each week, that relates to neurodiversity in women and girls. And the article that I want to discuss today is an article titled "Exploring the Lived Experience of Autistic Women, a Thematic Synthesis." So that's really an academic journal article that puts together a lot of different papers or a lot of different journal articles interviewing a lot of different autistic women. And it looks at kind of the overall patterns that emerge across all of those studies. So it's a very interesting, very useful study. It's written by Gosling and colleagues, and you can find it online. So if you just Google the title, especially if you go to Google Scholar, you will be able to access this journal article for free online. So it's a qualitative study, meaning that they don't necessarily look at numbers, but what they do is they look at the themes that emerge from the conversations, from the interviews that researchers had with women on the autism spectrum. And a couple of different themes emerged when we look at all those research studies together. And a first theme that emerged that was important for women on the autism spectrum is vocation and education. So that really refers to schooling, education, and the workplace, the workforce, right? One thing that autistic women, not surprisingly perhaps when we look at the overall autism literature, reported is that there is quite a lot of experiences of bullying, especially in the school system, but also to a lesser degree in the work environment. If we look at school attainment overall as a group, autistic women, they achieve less high educational outcomes than the general population of women, right? That doesn't, of course, apply to every single individual autistic woman, but we see an overall group effect. So that's really quite concerning, right? And that really indicates that there's still really, especially within that higher functioning autism group, there is that mismatch between autistic traits and autistic characteristics and society, right? Society being quite narrow, for example, the workplace. Because one additional thing that we see in this study that emerges is that relatively less women with autism are in the paid employment sphere, right? So there's still quite a lot of women that for one reason or another are not in paid employment. Now that of course would include women for whom that is a choice, but that also very likely would include a significant portion of women who are not in employment, not due to their choice, but maybe because work seems overwhelming, they haven't been able to find the right fit, maybe some difficulties in terms of finding the right manager, etc., right? And that fits with the wider literature where we see that autistic women are generally, as a group again, underemployed, right? So they're working below their level of education. Another theme that emerged for autistic women is diagnosis. So they reported the diagnostic process, that process that you go through to get a kind of an official health professional diagnosis of autism, as quite stressful and as a process that can be still enhanced quite a lot. There were also lots of reports that in this process, health professionals are not necessarily very sensitive to the experiences of women, not very adept at perhaps picking up masking or camouflaging kind of behaviors. And a lot of the tools and questions that are used in the diagnosis of autism, they are kind of historically still geared towards the experience that men and boys have and kind of the characteristics that they display, which are often more externalizing. And for women, these characteristics can be more often internalizing, right? Another area of focus that was important for women with autism was service provision. So really that therapy support, those kind of things, right? And same kind of similar issues were raised there, that still a lot of therapy support providers are not necessarily very sensitive to picking up on signs of autism in women. They often don't know that well yet how to support women with the difficulties they're experiencing, and kind of at the same time making use of the strengths that those women display, right? And a final domain that was highlighted by women with autism in this study was interpersonal relationships. So perhaps not surprising, looking at the overall autism kind of description, women often described as well feeling quite exhausted in social interactions, feeling quite confused about what are the rules and norms that social interactions are guided by. They identified 4 specific areas within this domain. So first area was intimate relationships, so that those can be often quite challenging. Then social relationships, so that kind of widens the net to friendships, acquaintances, etc. And then finally there was also the topic of sexual exploitation and abuse. So that was a topic that autistic women raised quite frequently. And where research kind of shows that as an autistic woman, you're at an increased likelihood of being on the receiving end of certain types of relationship abuse, right? So that's something to be aware of as well, that and that is not very much researched yet in the literature, right? And also in clinical practice, there's not necessarily a whole lot of awareness of this experience, and kind of not a whole lot of supports that are available for this group specifically. And then the final domain identified within those interpersonal relationships was camouflaging or mimicry or masking, as I already referred to earlier. So that's often something that women are very adept at, more adept at than men with autism. And that's not necessarily a personal choice. Sometimes people think this is a personal choice, but it's often due to kind of early socialization, right? Where in society, at least most societies today, there is a higher expectation on women that they will understand and navigate social relationships and social situations. And there's often more of an expectation on women that they will kind of understand what other people are thinking or what other people are needing. So there is often kind of limited understanding within the general population, but also within health professionals when it comes to the influences on camouflaging or masking. So that's kind of the main conclusions from this very interesting paper. If you have any comments, any of these domains that you think particularly are relevant for you, or any other domains you might recognize in your daily life as an autistic woman, please do let me know in the DMs. Very happy to have a discussion about that. Very eager to hear from you. What is your lived experience? And I'll see you next week for the second iteration of Book Club for Neurodivergent Women